I got a real awesome treat and podcast for you guys today. I got to sit down with my very good friend and partner in crime, Eli Erenthal, who usually is producing this podcast and sits behind the cameras, but this time he was able to come out and talk to me. This was basically a 2-year summary of what's been going on in our village and in this awesome revolution that we're creating. We talked about so many topics of healing and compassion and love and community. It was a delight. Eli has been around doing this work for probably around 20 years. He was mostly in the Lakewood area, and he's moved up here just to be part of the village. And besides it's always fun for me to talk to Eli. It will delight you to be able to see his awesome sensitivities and his insights. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Brainstorm podcast. And now, your host, Sonny Perlman.
Okay, Eli. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I see you every single day, but the people on the pod world do not
Pod
see you every
world.
day.
That's true.
In the pod world.
That's because I'm always sitting behind the camera.
Yes, behind the camera as the producer, one of your many, many, many positions in our village, right?
That is true.
This is a very exciting episode because it's about a 2 years that we're going with the podcast, something like that. October 19th, 2021.
That's right.
We're laughing because I asked Eli what day, the first day that we did a podcast, and he actually guessed that exact date. Very impressive. So,
It's one of my many tricks. I have
one of your many tricks, but we're going
remember weird
to.
things.
The idea of this one is to kind of talk about what the last 2 years have been like
whoa.
in our village.
How long do we have?
That's also when you came into our village.
That's true.
We reinvented the
A little
whole
bit before
program.
that. I got here July of
In
2021.
21.
Right.
So then we started the pod in October,
Shortly after. Okay.
and a lot of cool stuff happened on the pod
Yes, and at our village.
and at our village. So
I don't know if we're going to be able to cover all of it in just a podcast, unless the people at home have a long time to listen.
it's true.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that it's been an honor
Thanks for
so
saying
far.
that.
And it's
So
not
far.
It's not a eulogy.
Yeah.
It's been an honor.
Okay. So far, there's
working
more to come.
Together
Yes, it
with
has
you
been.
to do this awesome thing.
Amongst other things.
So
been
I'll
an
tell you
honor.
what, the way we'll do it is I'll ask some questions, you ask some questions, we'll shoot back and forth. This is not
Okay.
your typical podcast where I'm interviewing only you. So keep that in mind.
Okay. Now I have to think of questions. Now I feel pressured.
You have to.
Okay. I'll
Part
do
of
it.
this.
That's why I said I should be sitting in that seat, but
If you want,
I'll defer to you.
If you want,
We should
when you
switch
ask a
in the
question,
middle?
you could switch. That would be silly.
no. The truth is, like, I think that most of our conversations that we have in this office every day should just be recorded and we should make a podcast out of it. I
Right.
think that would be very entertaining.
I mentioned that a million times on the podcast. I think is that one of the greatest things that happened in our village is the staff meeting,
This is true.
where we sit around and we actually process our own feelings while we're processing the guys' feelings. While it's like,
And trying to bring some, like, levity and lightness to the work that could sometimes be pretty heavy around here.
right?
And make a lot of jokes. Laugh.
We do make a lot of jokes, and actually, one of the guys I was talking to today, I switched to joke mode too fast. And I
Yeah.
was talking really serious, and then I switched to joke mode, and it was just absolute confusion on his face.
Yeah, you got thrown off. I saw that.
And I'm like, you're new.
Yeah.
You'll figure this out.
Yeah.
I do believe that humor is one of the most overlooked tools of healing.
I'm just going to pause for 1 second. Sonny, roll in your pants sleeve. I'll cut this later. Your
What does that mean?
leg sleeve. You can see your sock in the whole thing in the frame.
What's wrong with my sock? I can't roll down my leg. You
Totally keep this on.
better keep this on.
Keep rolling.
All right, keep it rolling. No problem.
He didn't pause that. You paused that?
No, I didn't pause anything. That's
Can't
a great
pause.
Our Village moment, though.
This is my white socks. with my
Yeah.
pants.
You know, Sonny, I think that's one of the things that just make you very lovable is that you just don't care about a lot of the things that other people get stuck on. You know,
I think
it
there's
makes you
something
like
to that.
relatable. Of course, there is. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I also find myself incapable of being able to deal with tiny details.
You know what? That's why we make a good team.
Right. You deal with all the details.
Yeah,
And I've also
You're like a
surrounded
dreamer.
myself with
you like to
great
think
detail.
of big ideas and big details, and then you say, "Ellie, what's the big deal?"
Yeah.
And then I say, "But that's impossible." But then we get it done.
Right, I'm like, Ellie, get a new house.
Right.
And you're like, all right, we got it.
Yeah.
And you're like, you want to come with me to look at it?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
No.
it's a house. Like, just get a nice
Right.
house for the guys. It's not nice. Actually, talking about houses, to get down to what's really happening. Where we
Yeah.
at?
Well, I guess we could say when we started with one house, the house that we are currently in, where the podcast and the offices are based out of, which is our primary house.
Right?
We started here with 11 beds in this house, right?
Yes.
11 beds plus a few beds for staff. And today we are currently in the middle of working on our fifth house, location.
Woo! I think I
Yeah.
actually have a thing that does like clapping.
Noise, yeah.
I don't know how to use
We have
it.
Mendy here. Mendy's just a hype guy. There you go. Thanks, Mendy.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. And it's not just the other houses. It's also people living in the community and the neighborhood, and
Yeah.
it's in the shul and
Yeah.
there's so much that we're connected to. And that, see, the cool thing is when we started this podcast, we were actually kind of restarting our village.
Right.
Even though it was around during COVID, it was not. It was COVID style around. And then we really restarted. The dream that we had, and I have to go back to those first podcasts to know if we talked about it, but the dream was always bigger than a house.
Right. And actually the basic evolution here is we started, this was Our Village Sober Living. That was the name of the organization, the name of the program. And since then, we've evolved into, this is now Our Village Sober Community.
Right.
You know, which is, I think, you know, even though it's just like maybe, you know, semantics, but it's really like what you're saying. It's not just about the houses. It's about, there is a much, much bigger picture happening here. Aside from the 5 houses, there are people that, you know, have gotten married and live in the community, and other people in the community that have other organizations that have spurred off of, you know, this organization, and a lot of fantastic things that have
And
just
do a
been.
shout out again to the neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. Heck yeah. Shout out neighbors.
The neighbors
Yeah.
are an organization that was started by Shlomo Reichman and Simcha Hyman that is killing it in the community. It's like, we feel like it's an extension, brother, sister program, whatever. Pretty awesome. Also shouting out the living room, which we just had Shmaya on the podcast, and we've had Menachem a couple of times, but that's another part of extension of this community. I tell people when they come here that they're immediately being loved by 50 people.
That's right.
That's the feeling.
That's right. If they allow it.
They don't allow it.
Right. Well, yeah,
that doesn't
they,
stop
they are
us.
getting loved. It's, you know, it's, I guess it's, you know, how the experience is allowed in by the person who comes here.
Right.
You know? And also, once you're here, like you're part of the family. For
Okay,
life.
so I'll ask you a question.
Go for it.
I always get, like, even though I talk about this program all the time, I talk about it usually in ideas, my ideas. And every time I start talking about the actual details of the program, it sounds like an advertisement.
Right.
So, but ideas-wise,
Yeah.
since you got here, it's been over 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. So you're looking at this. This is maybe putting you on the spot. What would you say is the thing that surprised you most about this whole? Or a couple things that surprised you, or
Okay.
but I would love to know what surprised
It's a
you.
good question. It's a good question because I will say at this point, very few things surprise me.
Okay.
Because there's some of the things that have gone down the last few years are just like, you know, pretty mind-boggling. So today when things happen, or, you know, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess, yeah, it makes sense. It's Sonny, it's our village. That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we don't ask questions. I think the thing that is probably the most surprising for me is how successful the program is. And when I say the program, I really mean like how successful the philosophy and the ideology and the practicality in the way that it plays out with people, and how people move from point A to point B, and like what it looks like when they walk through the door and what they look like a year and a half later. And the dichotomy, the huge change and transformation that happens with individuals in a relatively short amount of time is just probably the most fascinating thing about this program. I understood the philosophy before I got here. I understood, and I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've seen a lot of people go, take different routes and, have different experiences in recovery, in treatment, in, the transformative spaces. And to see somebody walk through the door here, and I'm very blessed that I get to see that whole process. I talk to them before they walk through the door. Before they even get here, like we're already in conversation with them.
Before me.
Right. We have jokes about that, but I'm not going to make fun of you on the podcast. Yeah.
Well, now I've learned to delegate, and you have to go through a whole process to get into this.
That's true. That's true. It's very systematic, and
Used to be
and
just
it
call
works.
me on the cell. Could I come? All
Right.
right.
Right. Yeah.
I got to do all this stuff.
Yeah. What I was saying is that I get to, really, really watch the whole process, literally from the day they get here, or even before, for the few months that they spend here, till they move through the step-up house and beyond, and to be able to be like in the, just in the experience of watching that happen, and how somebody can move so vastly from coming in a really place of, they come here out of treatment. There's a certain regimen to them when they get here. Like, they feel regimented, and they feel like, I just did rehab and I have this and I have that. But to really actually see that kind of unfold, and to get to, meet them like who they are and what's really underneath a lot of that stuff, and see them, get enveloped by the community, and see the outer layers kind of peel off, and watch them grow into themselves. And watching the power of community really in real life happen is something that it never ever ceases to amaze me. When we have like a guy like moves out of the house and moves from here like into one of the step-up houses, or moves on, that's usually like a moment to reflect, and we usually, we have like a little, we give them a cake or something like when they leave, and and I could
We purposely do not have a graduation.
Right. We don't have graduations,
because
right?
our belief is you're just moving to the next level.
Yeah.
It's like
You don't graduate. Yeah.
But we all do say goodbye.
Yeah, and when we say goodbye, it's like usually a moment to just be able to reflect on like the journey, and like just to like see people, to be like, I remember when you walked in here, and I'm like blown away every time I look at you. And so I think that, to answer your question, like the thing that amazes me most is the people here. The people and the transformation.
Just the transformation.
Yeah.
Well, what surprises me the most, if you were going to ask me. You want to ask me?
Wait, let me try. Sonny, let me ask you the same question.
Well, while you're talking, I was
Sonny,
thinking about what surprises me the most.
Over the last 2 years, obviously this program has been around for much longer than that, but over the last 2 years since we've been going through this, these stages, what's been the most like surprising thing that you've seen?
Well, many, many things. Good. That's a really
Wait, did you like my question?
That's a really good question.
Yeah,
Wow.
thanks.
I love when people tell me I made a good question. I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh, I'm winning podcasting.
Yeah.
So, the two things that are very fascinating to me. One, I'm surprised how much time we spend doing things that don't really help in recovery. You're like,
Well, what do you mean when you say that?
right.
Because
So, talking to people about what they should do, and like a lot of the practical things. Well, you got to get up and you got to go do this and get into this and this part of your new next plan, or like adding all this extra stuff. We spend a lot of time on. Like in my past, I've spent a lot of time.
You're not talking about here.
I'm not really talking about here,
Okay.
but even here, more and more as I do this longer and longer, I realize that we're even doing things that are not necessary. And the second thing is connected, is how many times I'm asked a question and realize I'm just saying the same answer for almost every single question. You want to guess what the answer is?
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd be like, what do you do with this guy? He doesn't want to get up. He doesn't want to go to work. He doesn't want to. What do you do? And I feel like I don't have any wisdom to give over because it's the same answer.
And that answer is?
Well, you tell me.
I can't say it without getting emotional.
Okay. What's the answer?
It's always love. Every single time. Spend more time with them and love them more.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
And you know what? It almost feels like I don't deserve to be a famous therapist. Like I don't have too much to say.
Well, you know what? I think that the truth is it's so great because it's so simple.
It's so simple.
Yeah, and because it works. Side point. But it's
It's
also
wild
so simple.
how it works.
Yeah.
We ask these questions like, okay, we've had situations with people having full-blown breakdowns, and all that we did was love.
Which was a major clinical intervention learned in many years
Yeah.
in college, right?
I don't know. No one ever told me this one.
So
No one ever told me this one.
Well, that leads me to another question. How did you come to this conclusion?
I think the reason I came to the conclusion of everything that happens here is really because I have an inner rebel that literally is too cynical to accept any status quo. So every time, when we say things that are just a premise, like, oh, of course you need a lot of, and this is the big one I say all the time again, it's the most trouble for it also, but of course, the more therapy you do, the better it's going to be. And everybody just accepts that. Or this person has a chemical imbalance. We need to give them medicine. And everybody just accepts that. And I always have, in the beginning, I have okay, I accept it, but there's a niggling thought, really? I mean, why do we have this premise? Therapeutic world is around for 150 years, and they're just figuring things out as far as I'm concerned. So in my brain, I'm challenging every single thing, but as a young therapist, I kind of had to take it for granted and just have those kind of niggling thoughts in my head. But after years and years of watching that stuff not work, I'm like, maybe you don't know everything. So maybe therapy is good, but what's needed now is not an enormous amount of therapy. Maybe what's needed is something else. So I started observing the people who are getting better from addiction and in life in general. I've given this example way back, which is I started guessing who's going to be successful, who's not going to be successful. I've told you this before, right? Yeah?
Yes.
Was it on the podcast? Probably.
I don't know. But now that we brought it up, we should share it
Right,
with
so
people.
I used to always meet a kid and then try to figure out who would do well, who wouldn't do well. And I was pretty accurate after a while, but it was just gut instinct, And after I started analyzing the ones I was right, the prognosis is good, it was almost always they had super amount of support from the family, cousins, relatives, friends. That they had a lot of support. So I'm saying, okay, we need the support. Then I observed things like the living room, which I was very involved with, and it's part of our place. And I observed our place, and I'm seeing people who have been through program after program after program after program, and the living room is where they feel at home. And so everything was leading towards support. And that wasn't, yes, it's talked about a lot. 12 Steps talks about it, but no one was really putting it into practice. The only real revolutionary stuff we do here is we just stop with the extras. We're just focusing on 90% of the time, we're focusing on the support. So that's really how I came up with it, is because I'm a redhead rebel from Far Rockaway who won't accept anything anybody says.
Well, let me ask you another question, my redheaded rebel here.
I want a sweatshirt that says redheaded rebel, although I'm not redheaded anymore.
Add it to the t-shirt
Add it
list.
to the merch. We're going to be making merch for
Redheaded Rebel merch.
For our Brainstorm podcast.
Yeah.
If anybody has any
ideas,
we call them Sonnyisms.
Sonnyisms.
They they want to send in requests, send it on a YouTube comments, or let us know, because we're going to be making some fun merch.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you think this idea plays out when you get a phone call and there's a client, or there's this, we'll call him a client, there's this person, a human being is calling, right, or a family that, this young man has gone through many treatment centers and nothing seems to have worked, and they've tried a whole bunch of interventions and nothing's worked, and he keeps relapsing. So how do you feel that this inner rebel shows up when it comes to interacting with this person when he comes in? Are you also questioning that status quo? What do you believe about this person when he walks through the door?
Right. Yeah, the rebel in me is I never accept. There is also another premise in my field that everybody is all over, which is that somewhere between 2 and 20% are going to be successful.
Wow.
So it's ridiculously low.
Pretty low.
And I think that's a terrible way to look at it. And that truth is the way, and I can credit this to my mother. I don't think, she once said to me, because my mother made the first Our Place was in my house. All the teenagers would come to my house and hang out. And she once said to me that, I don't know if everybody got better, but everybody left better than they came in when they went through the house. You gained from it. And that stuck with me. So what I see with everybody coming in is that and this, by the way, is infectious, because I see the rest of the staff doing this, the guys doing this. There's just an assumption in our village that you're going to do all right. There's none of this well, if you leave, you're going to die. There's no discussions. As a matter of fact, we shut down any negative talk. Guys, the only time we tell guys, hey, simmer down, behave yourself, is if someone's trying to check the other guy and say nasty things to the other guy and to try to pump him up, or we're this is not what we do. He's all right. He'll be fine. Just give him love and encouragement. That's
right.
Our goal. So the premise of you're lucky, it's a miracle if they succeed. It's not. I just assume they're going to succeed. Yeah. And I see everybody else assuming. You do that too. I don't know if you did that before or started here, but I see you doing that. I see all the staff. Yeah. And then our conversations are okay, how come he's stuck here? How come he's stuck there? But no one's ever that guy.
Yeah, so we're not satisfied with the status quo.
Right. The other trick we have, and we see in the meetings all the time, is that because, and the staff is feeling this also now, and you have more experience than most of the guys, but is that we always have someone who's similar to this guy who's done well.
Right.
So it really helps when we see a guy really early
if that guy can do it.
Right.
Pretty much anybody can. Right.
I always point out, doesn't he remind you of the other guy? Right. And then you're oh yeah, remember we wanted to murder that guy?
Yeah.
Now we want to murder this guy?
Right. Yeah.
It gives
encouragement. We have case studies at
we
this
have
point.
Case studies.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for 20 years, but in this place, we've been around long enough to have the case studies.
Yeah.
So that's the what are the questions you get from people when you tell them about what's happening here?
Well, it depends who I'm talking to, right? So obviously there are people that are in the industry or people that are in the 12-step recovery community that are still very much of the the old school thinking, and belief systems that, there is a certain way that this is supposed to be, and that, includes accountability. And, we talk a lot about rock bottoms, and they talk a lot about enabling and things like that. And, when we talk about, loving them, question would be well, isn't there such a thing as too much love? Isn't there a point where you're loving somebody so much that you're hurting them? If a guy doesn't get out of bed in the morning, and he stays in his bed for 3 weeks straight, and he gets out of bed 11, 12, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, how exactly are you helping him? So those kind of questions, questioning the philosophy, is something that I encounter a lot. And, sometimes, I don't really feel like I need to answer, because I know that the answer is look at our success rate, look at what we're doing, look at our numbers, look at how, how the guys are doing, and then we can have the same conversation, because that way, doesn't really seem to be working, because if we talk about success rates, and talk about like what this is, 2 to 20%, it's probably even less for that for people that are going to rehab, definitely first time treatment,
Right.
and things like that. The success rate is, embarrassingly low, and it's, probably somewhere in the single digits, of the relapse rate is ridiculously high, and people are coming here and they are actually getting better. Now, I don't know how it works. I can't explain to you the science behind it, but like everything that you said, like what how you came to this conclusion is like we looked at where people were having success. We looked at successful people and saw that they had a network of they had a network of supportive people surrounding them. They had people that were in their corner, and that's what worked, and that's what we're trying to mimic and create here. And
Right. Oh, I want to add one thing to
Yeah.
my surprised.
go.
Even though I really, really, really believe in our philosophy, I'm always shocked when a guy gets a job. Because, and I was saying,
Say more about that.
no, because and parents are, like literally, I spoke to 2 parents today about this exact topic. They're going crazy. Like, our guys, and you mentioned, like, a guy could, like, the general rule is a guy comes to this place, they collapse. The way we see it is that they're almost letting air out because we're making it safe for them to collapse,
Like
like
you're
into our lap.
given
kind
permission.
of. We're giving them permission, and we're catching them in this net. And almost everybody, when they've been like revved up and like pushed and pushed and pushed, usually they're coming out of rehab and everybody's disappointed in them. They need to just, and we like allow them to do that. So you always have this drop.
Can you say why that is? Why is that so important? Why is it so important to give them the space to fall apart and to have that safety net? What's so important about that?
Okay, so yeah, I could.
Thanks.
I could.
Oh, I'm glad we had you here on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
Well, again, and I've said these things on the podcast many times. Actually,
Yeah.
not so many times, because I'm usually interviewing someone else, and I don't get to always say it. Usually I say it on other people's podcasts, interestingly. But
You know what? On the Brainstorm podcast by Sonny Perlman, I think that it's time, Sonny. It's time.
no, I've talked about this stuff.
No,
But
you
the
have
idea-
talked about it, but I think that one of our missions here is not just about the people here. One of the, I think it's really, really important for us that we're able to spread the message to the world and let other people know that what we're doing here, it's not just a philosophy for people that are struggling with addiction. It's not just a philosophy for people, that have gone to rehab and gone to treatment. Like, this philosophy is something that I think that if we spread this message, it should be in people's homes, in their families, the way that we raise children, in mainstream yeshivas and in schools, in places of employment between employers and employees.
Right.
And I think that if, that's why I'm asking why, when I ask this question, I'm like, why is it important for people to feel safe? What is this thing about safety that's so important? And I think that we'll say the same thing on every single podcast for forever. And I think it just in different ways. And I think that, that's the Jewish way, like,
Just
look
keep
at, like,
saying it.
yeah, look at, your Rabbi Dr. Torsky, what did you say? You mentioned what he said on one of
Right.
the
So I
podcasts.
saw him give a lecture. He said, I've written 50 books, and I've only written about one thing, which is self-esteem. And I just wrote it 50 different ways. And then he ended up writing 100 books.
Yeah.
And it was all on self-esteem.
So it's kind of the same thing here, like, this is a topic that it's very versatile, and it's a philosophy that gets applied in many different ways. I know how I apply it in my own life, with my family, with my children, and it's something that has been completely transformative in my life.
Right. We also started Mavakshim Anonymous. It's not anonymous because I'm calling you out as being one of the
That's true. Yeah, you have to.
members.
Don't look.
Anonymous.
Don't look.
But we have created a little community also just for us, and friends, and that was really something awesome. But to answer your question as best as I can, is the core belief of all addicts is that they are unworthy. They're unworthy of our love. They're unworthy of our acceptance, and even of our pride in them. They're unworthy of all that. And we're trying to let them understand that the worthiness comes from something way deeper than something they could accomplish. It is them that is worthy. The same way you tell a little baby that they're worthy, even though I have done no accomplishments in their life. Right. And we know they're worthy. You look at a baby and you're like, this person is worthy of love. They deserve love. And that's how we see babies. That's how we do it here. And what the first thing a guy will do when you're telling them you are worthy, is they will challenge it and say, yeah, what if I did nothing that would make you proud? What if I did the opposite of proud? What if I misbehaved, did something wrong? What would happen? And we say, give it a shot.
We don't say it with words, right?
Sometimes, by the way, I shouldn't say that. I've definitely said to guys, give it a shot.
Yeah.
See what happens. I said, please don't use drugs because I got to kick you out for drugs, but that's nothing to do with you. I can't have drugs in the house. But if you need space to be a baby or to just fall apart, like, test us. See if it works. We say that with just our words. We come in and we're doing all these words, and everybody's like, I heard these words before. Yeah, you'll love us unconditionally. Like, yeah, right. My uncle said this, my Rebbe said this, they all said this. And then as soon as I didn't point to my place in the Gemara, I got smacked with a ruler and sent to the principal. Right? So what I'm saying is, like, there has to be a form of testing of our philosophy in order for it to work. So the second they see, so day one, everybody's like, I'm getting a job, I'm doing this, I got 7 interviews, I'm going to all the meetings, I'm doing it, like, they're all revved up like rehab style. And then they look around and they're like, oh, that guy doesn't have a job. What's going on here? Like, could I test it? And then they're mean to a counselor and they try this, and we just keep being loving. Like, just keep revving it up. Like, and the more they're misbehaving, the more love they get, because that's our philosophy. Like, if you're misbehaving, that's more tests, and we have to do something about that. Like, it's it's an action that we need to do. The same way people are very focused on, like, how many therapy groups you get to, and we're focused on how much love this person needs and how to tell them in a million different ways. We do love interventions with the staff. The whole staff will sit around the guy and tell them how much you love them if they're falling apart.
Let's talk about that a little bit for a second.
So did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think you did. And I also, before we go to that, I want to say, like, from what I'm hearing, like, the way that I would translate that, let's say for myself with my family, with my kids, when my kids are, when doing something that we would call misbehaving or acting out, what I'm hearing is you're saying what they're challenging my love to them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Very often. I will say this, like, biggest question I get, I just got this on the Meaningful People podcast. They were, like, really challenging this whole idea. And the question is, what point does the discipline start? Like, we know, if I'm using the mashal, the allegory of raising children, or chinuch, like, we know there's more than one part to this. There is the love that we start with, and then there is the discipline, where you have to have a disciplined life. Discipline comes with consequences and all that stuff. So when I keep pitching this idea, everybody's like, oh, you're just talking about love, 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 love. That's how you raise a kid. That's not how you raise a kid. That has to be the premise of how you raise a kid. But then you teach them, this is how you do it. If you don't do this right, you're going to get in trouble this way. You don't do this. Now, the beauty of the world, in general, is that the world gives you consequences for doing things wrong.
Natural consequences.
Yeah. If you don't get up and go to work, you will be broke and unhappy, and everybody else around you has got money. I say we have two, like, I'm going on a tangent, but we'll come back. We have, like, two human conditions that we depend on for our village to work. One is boredom, and the other is peer pressure or jealousy. Those are two very powerful things.
And both very natural.
Right. They're both very natural.
Yeah.
Everybody feels them. So when we tell them, hey, yeah, stay in bed. Don't get a job. Yeah. What are they watching? First of all, there's no rebellion because we're not fighting them.
Right.
So that's gone. Now it's just them. They know it's their fault. And they're watching. They're sitting around all day. Okay, they check their TikTok 4,000 times. They're done with that. Now they check the next thing. They're just done. There's nothing happening. It's 12 o'clock. They're like looking around. So the first week you can sleep till 12. But after that, you're up.
Right.
And everybody's up. And they all went out. And you're bored out of your mind. And in most places, they'd be like, okay, let's get you into, coloring book classes and then the horse classes and the this classes and everything we could bill for, right? We just, okay, now it's yoga. Now it's, everybody could just go along with the plan of all these therapeutic ideas. We're like nothing. You have one check-in group in the morning, and then that's it. What do you want? What should I do today? Oh, the plan starts at 6 when everybody gets home. And then we go to meetings and we go out for activities and we have groups and we have all that stuff going on. But until 6, you just do nothing. And I've gotten a lot of people like, you got to fill their day.
Right.
And I think, no, I don't. This is a mind of an adult man, and will be adult women, who do not like doing nothing. Everybody gets bored when they're doing nothing. So there's boredom, and then at 6 o'clock, when all the guys who looked like them 2 months ago are rolling in, they're paying their rent, they got a new pair of shoes today, guy just got a new car, he got the newest cell phone, they feel like they accomplished something at work, they're watching that.
Good old peer pressure.
Good old peer pressure. They're like, I want that. So it happens to be when you're an adult, you don't need to do too much consequences to teach people how to move on in life. But when you're raising kids, they have to feel the premise of love, but there is a place for hey, that's not allowed. And it's a different discussion. So there is a place for that. I'm not pushing for the idea of unconditional love no matter what a kid does. If a kid goes and smacks their siblings, there has to be a consequence. If they're unkind to this old guy in the street, there has to be a consequence. You're teaching them that this is unacceptable in the world. But if they have that premise of love, they can accept all the problems.
Right.
And not only do the consequences are they useful, they also help us learn that we have trust, that our parents trust us and believe in us, that we can handle the consequences of the world. So it's not so simple to back away from that idea. But very often we'll find kids, and I call them, you have those days where the tank will just be sucked empty. I use the tank marshal all the time. Refer to any other podcast I've ever done. But some days your kid looks at you and this is not a consequence day. This is a day they need ice cream and some love, and as a parent, it. Don't do the consequence day because you're a robot just doing the consequences. There are days when your tank is empty, a kid came home, somebody beat them up on the bus, somebody made fun of their friend and they were too scared to defend their friend, and they feel shame and terrible, and then they come home and they knock over a glass and you want to just yell and scream at them, but you have to look.
Right.
So that's, in that sense,
you gotta lean into your parental intuition.
Yeah, we all go back to our baby place. The reason why in addiction it's so important to be so tightly in level 1 is because their tanks are empty. Completely.
That core belief is what we're always fighting against, that core belief that they believe in.
So we all have it a little bit. Addicts have it a lot.
Yeah.
And so there are days when we all feel like an addict. We all feel horrible.
And well, I've heard you say that
what
addiction is a spectrum, and that everybody falls on it somewhere, and that we all struggle with some level of addiction.
And it's shifting in your life.
Yeah.
And sometimes
you're higher,
Sometimes.
sometimes you're lower. So meaning that these types of interventions would be appropriate for everybody at when it's appropriate.
Right.
I guess it's just about understanding when and where that it's appropriate to be
Yeah.
applied.
I think this stuff is baked into like small villages. It's
Right.
baked in. You don't have to give this whole philosophy. A lot of this philosophy is like the fact that we're teaching it. If it would have been 500 years ago, they would look
Right.
at me like I'm
Yeah.
from another planet. They're like,
Well, we see it
"Of
in like our
course."
shul, you know. In our shul, we dive in a I don't know, a utopia of a shul called Ar Shlomo.
Our
here
Shlomo
in Pomona.
represent.
The Kalbach shul, and I think that that's a very natural experience of the communal experience. There is just like loving and accepting, you know, and come as you are, and you know, we'll meet you where you're at, and it's not you know, nobody has to be told like that when someone walks in and they look a little down, the guy needs a hug. It just happens.
Right. It is pretty fun to walk into shul and literally hug every single person
Yeah.
until you get to your seat.
Yeah, sometimes it's like
Sometimes there's no seat.
Right, that's true.
There's a lot of tourists in that shul. But by the way, how
Yeah.
much does that talk about a shul where we literally, it is like shul tourism? We have like our, 100 people at Dava there or something like that. I don't know what the number is.
Yeah, people
But
are coming in
every
because they
week
want that.
It's so full. How is that not speaking to the fact that we all need this?
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious that this is not just for addiction.
Yeah, I mean, I almost this has happened so many times where people come to me for Shabbos and they'll come to our shul and they'll be like, okay, I want to move here, and then they look at the price of housing and they're like, okay, maybe not, but like they recognize like so quickly how like this is so valuable to have a place in my life where I could go to and feel just, the human connection, a very high level of spirituality. And also for a lot of people that have experienced some sort of religious trauma or have had negative experiences in shul, to come to a place where there's just like it's just okay to be you and nobody cares, and the opposite, not nobody cares.
Right.
You're very welcomed. And
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a personal question.
go for it. Nobody's listening, right?
How has your life changed since
That is
that's
personal.
It is personal.
This
You can
podcast
share.
is going to be
It's very public. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people watching nowadays.
wow. Yeah.
I would ask this to any employee that came in. And
Yeah, how has my life changed since I got here? Well,
you can be as personal as you want. You do not
Okay.
have to be too, I never encourage people to be too personal.
okay, got it.
It's public.
Okay, I'm gonna rewind all the thoughts I just had. No, I listen. I'm very proud and happy to talk about this topic because it actually speaks volumes of the work that I do. I tell people all the time I am a recipient of our village. As much as I put in, I also get back. And honestly, when I got to our village, let's just say my life wasn't that great. Things weren't that wonderful. I mean, things were okay. I lived in Lakewood. I had been there for 16 years. Things were okay. There was different challenges that I was experiencing, and I got a phone call literally out of the blue from you, Sonny. Sonny calls me up and says, "Eli, we're looking to reopen our village, and we're looking to hire somebody. I know you work in this industry, and I know you know a lot of people. Do you know somebody? We're looking for an entry level guy to come and do some of this work." And like almost before you even finished asking, I said, "I'm in. I'll do it." And you're like, no, you don't understand. I can't afford somebody like you, Eli. I just need somebody to come in. I said, you know what, Sonny? I am willing to take whatever you're willing to pay. We just need to figure out a way that I can make it work so that I'm not homeless, and we'll figure it out. And I think we were both kind of shocked at that. And
It was quite a leap.
yeah, it was a leap, but like literally within a few weeks, I was here. I sold my house in Lakewood. I moved to Muncie, to
Became
Pomona.
my neighbor.
Became your neighbor. That was probably one of the best parts.
Right.
Got my kids into the schools here, and ever since I've gotten here, I've really like been in the Our Village community. I've been in, like the Our Shlomo community that we mentioned. We created this thing called Mavakshim, like, and I've just like been like maybe in the right place at the right time, or maybe somebody who's been, instrumental in making a lot of these things happen. And because I'm here, I am like deeply, deeply rooted into this community, and all the things that we're talking about, all the, that the healing is coming through community and through people and through connection. I've been a recipient of that. And as a result of that, I have seen, I'm almost like embarrassed to say how great I'm doing, because I want to say that.
I think you're doing great.
I want to say that, thanks. I want to say that, like, I feel like I'm at a place in my life that I have all the things that I've always asked for. Like, all the things that I've always been davening for and hoping for and praying for, and, doing work on myself to be able to get to that place. I feel like I just have all those things. And I look at my life and I feel like I'm incredibly, incredibly blessed. And I believe that a significant amount of that is a result of the fact that I'm here and that I'm doing this work, and that I am surrounded by layers and layers of love and support and community and connection, and that I am a result of Our Village. Like, I am somebody who has been on the receiving end of what this philosophy has to offer, and as a result of it, I'm doing phenomenal. My family's doing phenomenal. Everybody loves it here. And things are just, we're just like really, really incredibly, incredibly blessed. And, I tell people that I have the best job in the world, Yeah. I have the best boss in the world. Shout out Sonny Perlman.
That's right.
And I just,
I'm gonna say I have a very similar experience.
Makes sense.
I didn't move to another place or anything like that, but I changed careers. It's not a full change of careers, but it was in the trajectory of just building my private practice and going that route. I think I changed it before Arena, but it's like I've almost seen, not almost, I've seen not the answer. I'm saying not about a lot of things, but I've seen the skeleton of the answer in my own life. I mean, like this idea of like everybody holding each other and everybody's responsible for everybody else, and as a community, like if someone's suffering, it is not their responsibility to get better. It is our responsibility to hold them up. They want to get better.
Yeah.
But they need us to hold them, and I'm seeing that, and I'm watching that with the guys, and I could walk into here and guys, I feel the support everywhere, where I could share with guys that are like looking up to me, like how I'm struggling, and it's like, it's not a thing that is looked down upon. I've once in a while was like, you're the leader. Stop it.
Right.
Stop it. Shut it down. But I see it. I feel it. I could sit down at the Wednesday night meeting. We all get together with the guys, which we can talk about for a second because it's awesome. And it's like you could feel it in the air, this feeling of warmth and like connection. And I'm sounding like we're in a cult, but it just, it's like almost like
Should we
electric.
put a little, Mendy, can you put a little sign up link on the bottom here for the cult?
To join the cult. To join the cult. To join the cult, sign up here. Wednesday night meeting. That's also something we should talk.
The Wednesday night meeting is a fascinating thing. It's just for the context for people listening. It's every single Wednesday night. The family gets together. All the guys that live in the house. It's actually the only thing in the house that we call mandatory, but there's nothing mandatory.
And it's
here.
only mandatory to the people who are living
to live here
in the main residence.
Yeah, it's the only thing that you really need to show up for the whole week. And it's we put out a ridiculous food. Shout out to Chef Hilly, who crushes it every single Wednesday. Actually every night, but specifically Wednesday nights, he does a ridiculous job. We go all out. And we have to put out an extra table. There's usually anywhere between 20 and 30 guys there. And
I mean, just put in context, if there are 11 guys in the house,
right, there's a lot
another
of
20 are showing up.
yeah. So guys that used to live here, like people make it their business to be here Wednesday night, and we just basically just go around the table and everybody just shares. There's no real specific format of what you have to share, but what comes out and why it's so fascinating because always there's like ebbs and flows, you know. I don't remember who it was, but someone pointed it out. Like 1 week, this side of the table is doing okay, you know,
Yeah.
and everyone else is suffering. But you know, like the vulnerability, the gratitude, the you know, just the immense amount of caring from like one person to another, and like you know, the best part about this meeting almost is after the meeting when you see like when somebody shares in that meeting that they're struggling and then all of a sudden you'll see like a couple of guys around that person like rallying around that person.
Right.
It's just like I can't go one Wednesday night without crying during the meeting. It just doesn't happen. Like I can't. And like it's almost embarrassing already.
It is
It's like, come on, man up, Ellie.
It's also a time where we get to see miracles.
Yeah, a lot of nachas happens.
Like we have people that their parents were like literally on suicide watch, and a year later they're killing it. I mean, doing life
Yeah,
and still dealing with. It's like it didn't get good. It's like everybody else's life.
right.
They're like they have to deal with everything. They deal with the bills and the taxes and everything that everybody else does, and they're just like a full-fledged member of society. Like, dude,
Yeah.
and we get to see that.
Shifting from
Yeah,
surviving to thriving, to quote some meme that I read somewhere.
it's a good meme.
Yeah, or some
Not
cliche
putting it on
line.
the merch. It's not going on the merch. It's not
Yeah.
our line.
I want to say something about what you said before about you know when somebody's struggling, it's not their responsibility to get better. Now, you asked me earlier about like what are some of the questions that I get when I talk to people about our program.
Right.
That is something that it will always get challenged
Always.
because it's like, what are you talking about? This guy is an adult. He's got a family, right? He's got kids. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he's not a struggling teenager. Like, tell him to like man up, you know, get his stuff together, and like, come on, like, it's not okay.
Right.
So what do you say to that, Sonny?
Well, actually, it was interesting because this was Meaningful Minute podcast. I'm bringing it up again.
Yeah, why not?
It was a big podcast.
Yeah, plug meaningful
A lot of people
people.
saw
Meaningful
it.
people.
Is it Meaningful People?
That's the name of the
What'd I
podcast.
say?
Yeah, Meaningful Minute. But I think that's like their
Started
shorts.
with Meaningful Minute, and now
Meaningful
it's
People.
Meaningful People. But
Yeah.
the guy on it, Nahi, good dude, was really challenging me on this exact idea, and he really didn't shift until I talked about Shiva,
Yeah.
which is really, which is like, it just occurred to me sitting at a Shiva how close I was like this is ancient, this idea of Shiva, and we're doing it constantly. We're going to Shivas and we don't realize the message in it. And so the message of Shiva is that there are times in life where our tank empties. Like we are in the worst trauma, worst difficult situation ever. And we don't say to those, what we do in Shiva for 7 days is we surround them as a community and hold them. And we don't say, you know, when I was saying it to Nahi, he was almost like laughing because I was like, get up, go to work, have some responsibility. What, you just gonna sit there on the floor like a baby? Get going. When we do our Shiva, it's like, don't get up, don't go to work, don't say anything. You want to talk? You have to talk first. We have to listen to you. It's not about you listening to us. If you go through, I once gave a lecture and went through all halachas of Shiva and tapped it as, this is the philosophy of our village. There's a point where you're not even allowed to do mitzvahs. You're not allowed to do anything. You have to sit there. You're not allowed to take a shower. That's the thing we have. You know, once in a while we get a guy in here, he doesn't even know how to take a shower. You know what I'm saying? And we hold them until they do. What I'm saying is, for someone to get to the place of addiction where like they have given up all hope on life, the most equivalent level of trauma that we could compare this to is someone who lost someone they love. That's the closest we could go. Now, I will tell you, for them, they lost themselves. And they are mourning themselves and trying to figure out how to deal with it. And everybody has been saying, get off your butt and get going. And it doesn't work. Over and over, it doesn't work. But the genius of our Jewish sages is that we created this idea of Shiva. It works. People recover from the worst trauma in the world. After 7 days, after a month, after 11 months and 12 months. And our whole schedule of giving them more and more responsibility as they move on. But even the idea, I always love the idea that you don't shave. Like, they get all scruffy. Like, get your act together. It's like, no, we got you.
Pull apart.
That's the beauty that Judaism brought to this world, is that, like, before Judaism arrived, it was every man for themselves. Like, it was like, and we said, you have to be kind to the broken. In the old days, I mean, if I think of the Viking cultures, like, if you were born like this, they throw you off a cliff. We don't need you. You're not offering anything to us. What Judaism brought to the table, and it's all over, a lot more than they talk about tznius. They talk about the idea of helping the downtrodden, the orphan, the widow, the person who's even if someone has a heavy load, and it's their camel is whatever donkey fell down. That's our job, is to help them. What am I getting out of it? Nothing. Someone's broken, we help them. It's probably the most universal Jewish truth that is ignored. Not ignored.
Well, I mean,
Chaverim came to help me twice this month.
Wow. I mean, we can talk about what's going on in the world right now.
The Jewish world is like gorgeous.
So the ridiculousness of, like, the amount of chesed and giving that's happening right now, for Israel. Like, I mean,
it's incredible.
It doesn't make any sense. It's so unprecedented. It's just like.
Did you see anything that, like, blew your mind with the Israel thing?
I mean, there's so much. Like, I don't even know where to.
I just saw somebody just said out that they had these, my favorite thing, the hot tubs.
Yeah.
People might not know.
I saw that video.
People not know. Did it make you think of me?
Yeah.
Okay. People may not know in the Podverse that I accidentally, about a year ago, bought a blow up hot tub. And it's like a what is it, like a blow up pool?
Like
but it's for adults.
Yeah, inflatable hot tub.
Inflatable hot tub.
Yeah.
I think it's the dumbest item I ever had.
Yeah.
I have spent a good 200-300 hours in this thing already.
Yeah, and convinced all your friends to buy
and convinced
one.
everybody to buy blow up hot tubs. And I just saw that these Israeli, this group just went and got, like, hot. What did they do? They were filling it with water, making like big.
Just like a hot tub party.
Just hot tub party.
Yeah.
I was like, that's so Jewish.
It is so
You
Jewish.
see the other side.
Right.
You see the other side. They are fight and kill and murder, and we're like, here's tzitzis. This is gonna help you. We love you. How can I give you sandwiches? How can I hold you? You cannot stop the Jewish spirit.
Right.
It is wild, and it's so cool that we're able to, like, show that to the world. They see it.
Yeah.
But
I saw another really cool, and they took like a truck, like a semi trailer, and like a flatbed,
right,
and they lined it up with washing machines and dryers. Did you see that one?
I saw it.
How great is that?
Loved it.
How great is that? And, like,
Hey,
it's just like a portable laundromat, and just driving around to different, like, bases and, like, doing people's laundry.
I love it. I want to try to explain the greatness of Judaism.
Yeah.
And I want to really explain the greatness of Judaism. And even I'm a man who struggles with faith and all that stuff. I got all my stuff is for different podcasts probably, but I never lose my faith to the Jewish people. They're incredible.
One of a kind.
But what?
One of a kind.
One of a kind.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
But when I want to explain it, I will tell people about Chaverim. Not Hatzalah. Hatzalah is amazing, but I understand it. Other cultures have come up with a volunteer ambulance. It's an idea that you have. Shmira or Shimrim, I get it. We got to stay safe.
Right.
But a guy breaks down on the road, and I'm going to tell you, the other day I broke down, and I haven't mentioned my Tesla in a while in this podcast.
True.
My brother says it sounds like I'm showing off. My brother Shim, he's like, a little bit, settle down a little.
A little flex.
He's a little flex. Although Teslas are very cheap now, so it's not such a flex anymore. But a Tesla, one of the dumb things about a Tesla, I don't want to talk. Elon, I'm sorry if I ever say anything wrong to you, or mamish, ayes, mechila. But there's no spare tire in a Tesla. So I called the other night, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was on the Palisades. I get a flat tire. I was in the Palisades because that's what happens when I have to leave work at 2 in the morning. So I'm coming back. I'm stuck, and I call Shiva. Chaver. And I will tell you, the Muncie Chaverim are also Shiva. So that's maybe.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you should know that. So you call Chaverim also. I call Chaver, whatever it was a dispute about which area I was in.
Territorial dispute.
Which territory. So I had to call a couple of them. Anyway, at the end of the day, this guy from Muncie says, do you have a spare? And I said, no, I don't have a Tesla. He's like, oh, that's fine. We have a tire gemach. I just want you to take a moment to understand how awesome that is. It's not, why are they so awesome? Why are we the coolest people ever? It's incredible. Not only are they coming to help me, the guy drove a half hour all the way down the Palisades. He was in Muncie to the first exit. He drove all the way down, comes down, and they might have to use the tire. But they have thought of maybe people don't have spares, so they made a tire gemach. And he said, "I'm gonna have to take a picture of your credit card, because if you don't return it, like that was like him being tough, like like I need proof." They came up with a tire gemach, and I'm just like, how we are in a people that are so sensitive to somebody who's in need, that we've thought of every possibility of what we could do to help them.
It's very our village, like the whole, now you break down Chaverim that way. I mean, it's super our village. Like a guy stuck on the side of the road, feeling helpless, like nowhere to go. And, it was like, no, we got you.
Right.
Like,
and the regular world,
we'll
maybe,
take care of you.
If you weren't thinking like this, if you weren't thinking like our village, you'd be like, get AAA.
Yeah.
Or like, why were you driving on bald tires?
Right. Or I'll come and I'll charge you.
Right, I'll come and charge you.
Pay for my time.
Pay for my time. All this stuff, it's just not how a Jew thinks. I think that a program like this is the reason I believe that this revolution is starting in the Jewish world is because we are a light onto the nations. That's what I believe. That we have been practicing loving kindness in such a deep way for almost 3,000 years.
Yeah, I was thinking about that in last week's Parsha, talking about Avram Avinu and
and the guests.
I'm like, you just had your bris. Like, just sit back,
Right,
relax. And he's like fighting for guests and like begging and davening to Hashem for. I'm like, this is so classic. This is like so. It's perfect. It's like that's what we do.
Baked into
it's
our
baked
DNA.
into our DNA. Yeah, for sure.
And it's wild.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the word you just used though. You said revolution. You said that this revolution is starting. So what? Yeah, the philosophy is revolutionary, right? Like it's revolutionary in terms of like it's not the norm in the industry, in the treatment and recovery industry. This is not necessarily the norm. But what do you think is, like, if we're talking about like the overall landscape of the way mental health and addiction is treated in the Jewish community, what is this thing that you're calling a revolution? Like, what do you see for the future? Like, how do you see how our village is going to be that light that you're talking about? Okay,
so the deal is what we're doing is going back a lot of years. What I believe we lost during the Industrial Revolution, or like when people start leaving home and leaving the small villages and going out to the big city, and we all leave our people, right? We leave our villages, and we spread out, and we've lost that idea. We don't have grandparents living in our houses anymore. We don't have all the things that keep us going and live long, healthy lives together. And that's the village. That's the village. Now, I wouldn't throw out what we've gained from the Industrial Revolution for anything. It's wonderful. We all have like running water, and people don't die in childbirth, and it's fantastic.
A lot of helpful things.
There's a lot of helpful things. And I can watch Netflix till I pass out. You know what I'm saying? Like, that didn't happen before the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
What'd they use then? Was it Blockbuster? Before the Industrial Revolution. Anyway, so
The very beginning.
the very
Do you
beginning.
remember going to Blockbusters, though? Talking about Blockbusters?
Dude, the amount of money I used to spend on Blockbuster,
Yeah.
late fees. Anyway,
I just had a problem, though. You have to, like, literally, like, decide based on the title and on the cover art. You have to decide whether or not you want to watch
that was
a
all
movie.
you get.
That was all you got. Like,
That was all
now,
you get.
I guess the flip side is now it takes an hour or two to decide what you want to watch because you're, like, watching the previews.
You watch
Then you
every
just,
preview.
like, get it, and you'd be like, we're stuck with this. This is what we're watching, guys.
This was stuck.
Yeah.
So the revolution that we're talking about is not for addiction or even mental health,
Okay.
I should say. The goal and the dream is to figure out, and by the way, I haven't figured it all out yet, but to figure out how we could integrate the village back into city life, back into our community. I believe that the Jewish community is already doing a great job with it, like I mentioned. But we you know, there was a comedian, I forgot who it was, and he said, we didn't have anything when we were kids, but our parents knew exactly who did. I forgot which comedian it is. He's like, you want a basketball court? The Schwartzes have a basketball court. You want a hockey? You want to play hockey? You can play hockey on Sage Street. You want to go there? Like, they knew exactly who had the trampoline. Even back in the 80s, like, there was a sense of community because you didn't have everything. Now we have, like, gone to a place where we have like, completely cut off every sense of community as possible. Like, everybody needs a trampoline, a pool, a hot tub. This in every single house because we are raising our kids as a two-parent home or one-parent home, but we have gotten rid of the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts. One of my biggest frustrations is why aren't we tapping into the largest senior citizen population that has ever existed? I mean, we talk about like bubbies and zadies that are literally being wasted. Like that, those used to be the core of every community was the aged people with their wisdom and thoughts. Now it's like, all right, okay, boomer, you know, you're like, get out of my face, go live in some sort of isolated place so that we don't even forget you exist. Like we have like lost every sense of community, and we're all suffering because of it. Now, I believe the mental health crisis is because of this. So what I'm talking about when I'm talking about revolution is not just an amazing recovery addiction program. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm taking the population of people that are suffering the most and showing you that this works even for them. You want to talk about a Kava Homer? Kava Homer, it'll work on everybody. We need to figure out how to bring villages back to the city. If it doesn't work the old way, then how do we bring it into the new way? I don't really know, but I can tell you, Chaverim is a great start.
Right.
Chaverim's a great start. Atzola is a great start.
Well, you were saying the other day, we were talking about how like guys that go through our program become like ambassadors for the program, not for the program, but for the idea and the philosophy. And they're out in the world and they're seeing something and they're like, well, maybe you should just try a little more love,
Right?
You know, a little more community, you know, and stop, you know, and like we're seeing that happen and like, you know, hearing feedback about how, you know, the message is getting, you know, passed on like through people that have been like experienced it and now they're out in the world and, you know, it's like becoming like, oh, that's very our village like, you know, people are saying that, you know, like, you know, people obviously in our circles, but, the people are.
The crazy thing is that the people who benefit the most, and it sounds cheesy as anything, are the helpers. They're the ones that benefits the most, and that's the crazy thing. If you ask anybody who's benefiting the most from Hatzalah, if they really understood, it's the Hatzalah guys. They are having their lives are full of fulfillment. Now, I'm not saying that people aren't getting help from Hatzalah guys. They are. But the Hatzalah guys, if you look at the joy of going to help people, and like, I'm going and I'm doing, and they have this whole group of friends, and they're doing it together, and obviously their lives aren't being saved. So maybe I shouldn't say it. Maybe I'll say Chaveru, because it'll be a less controversial type of statement.
Right. Yeah. We're going to get feedback from the Hatzalah guys now?
What? Yeah, let's hear feedback.
You know what? We should
can't
actually.
mention Hatzalah guys.
Well, let's give a shout out to the Hatzalah guys who, they. Thank God they, in this area at least, they know that when they hear our address, they come out.
They're so nice.
They come out
every time they come here.
Yeah, they come fully equipped with a lot of people.
They're always expecting like a major issue, and it's like a stomach ache.
Right.
And we're like, sorry, I know you wanted to like Narcan somebody.
Right. Yeah. No, but props to them, because they every single time they come, they take our guys, and no matter what the issue is, big or small, and they take care of them and take them to the hospital and make sure that they're okay and they communicate with us. So
they're awesome.
Big props to Hatzalah.
But I'm saying our community this stuff is baked in, but there's something missing. I said I went to this conference and like found out that this person was there, and 4 people on the block were struggling with kids too that they didn't know about it. It's like, let's get together and help each other and be there for each other. And what I'm saying is a deeper truth than any psychology book could ever tell you. Although some psychology books like Rogers and stuff will tell you this stuff, but this is ancient. This is an ancient idea. Like, we have the answers to most things, and it's not an accident that the Torah literally keeps saying over and over and over, be kind, do nice things. It's like constantly saying it. And you're like, I got it. Okay. So treat people nicely. No, that's the answer, is to be together doing this together. And I think that we can make the best argument that the reason the Jewish community is still around is that we're forced to live in communities because we need a minyan on Shabbos.
Right.
And it seems silly, but I think we exist now is because I was just reading an awesome book about the pioneer Jews. I tell you, I was reading it. It was a fantastic book. I'm always in the middle of a couple of books, but I'm reading this book about the pioneer Jews, which
that doesn't sound very fiction.
It's not fiction.
Yeah,
I could read nonfiction once in a
while.
Okay. Anyway, these Jews, during pioneer times, like we're talking before America existed, living in America, and they did awesome things. But one of the things where they became very American in the sense that they became very individual in spirit. Like, they would be off traveling, going to living with the Indians, and the first generation, you had Yiddish guy, and they were still doing kosher and stuff like that. But you almost never have a descendant of them that are Jewish.
Wow.
And the reason is because they, as far as I know, is that they weren't in communities.
Yeah.
And this is how we stick together, is in a community.
Yeah.
So that's
what's giving us fortitude. I mean, if we go back to, again, the Israel conversation, I mean, it's like, I actually wonder to myself, if we didn't have all the things that are happening right now, right? All the amount of, let's say there's 300,000, miluim or reservists that they called up, right? But really there's 1 million people behind them that are supporting them. I mean, my mother-in-law is in Israel, and she's delivering challahs to army bases. People that would never have anything to do with a war or an army are literally actively participating in this war in some way. And making a difference, and it's not, these soldiers are out there, but they're really not alone. There's really besides for all the people in Israel, all the people in America, all the resources that are being sent, and all the money that's being raised, and it actually honestly feels really nice, even to observe it, to like watch it happen, to be like, wow, like I am part of like a pretty freaking cool nation of people.
Yeah.
You know, and there is like a heartwarming feeling that, like, you know, like I know that when something happens in our community, somebody's gonna have your back.
Yeah.
You know,
And we know it in our bones. No one has to give Our Village lecture to the people in Israel.
right?
We know that when Israel is suffering, we
Right.
take care of each other.
Time to whip out the barbecues.
Dude, the barbecues. Somebody was just telling me, I want to do something meaningful in my life. I'm like, dude, you know how to make a barbecue, right? Get on a plane
Right.
and go make some barbecues for some soldiers. What are
Right.
you doing?
Yeah, my cousin's doing that. Pez, he's so.
Is he
perfect.
making barbecues?
Yeah, he's like, you know, going to army bases and doing exactly what he loves doing.
My sister is running
Making
around
barbecues.
feeding all the soldiers, getting bulletproof vests for the reservists. Like, it's crazy what's happening.
Yeah.
But I will say, we don't turn on our inner amazing until the trauma happens.
Right.
That's what's happening in the addiction in the Jewish community, which was practically unheard of 100 years ago or 50 years ago.
Addiction wasn't heard of, or
In the Jewish community, like you had the town drunk, but that was it. Like you didn't. It was. We were a very, very, very tight community-based religion, and like addiction was. We helped each other before the trauma came, like or while the trauma was. It's not that the trauma didn't happen.
right.
We had massive supports right away.
We've always had traumas, but this is. You're saying like that this like what we're seeing now is maybe as a result of people drifting further apart and people becoming more isolated in their own family units.
I think it's a problem, and I think it's a solution.
Wow.
And that we have to figure out, listen, this is a new challenge. We're spread out.
Yeah.
When you're in a community, like in the old days, there weren't enough Jews to decide if you could be allowed to come into my Jewish school.
Right.
We're at a point where we're making decisions.
Right.
We follow a Torah. Like, this is going to sound terrible, but I have known cases of schools kicking out an orphan girl because of their skirt was too short.
That's terrible.
What the irony, the absolute insanity of that is, like, the Torah maybe mentions sneas like in passing once, right? You could argue about that as much as you want. But it talks about orphans like 1 billion times, and like, has something gone mad that the same people that have created Chaverim are missing out that an orphan is suffering? Like, it's mind-boggling to me. So what I'm saying is, I'm
Bit of a sore topic here.
the revolution.
Yeah.
The revolution we're talking about is you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There were a lot of absolutely incredible, I don't know how to say it. There were incredible coping strategies that were happening naturally in the old world. And we have changed a lot of the old world, but we also threw out a lot of those coping strategies. And we need to bring them back. And they're straight out of the Torah, whether you're Jewish or you're Christian or you're Muslim. They're all of those, and any other religion, by the way. Like, I was watching the Dalai Lama saying the common denominator of every single religion is compassion. If you're in a religion, compassion is the number one thing it talks about, and everything else is noise. Like, there's a lot of noise in all these religions. But the common, there's not a religion out there, and even like we're having this issue with Islam now, and like, if you look at Islam and you read the Quran, it does not talk about killing the Jews. It talks about loving the orphan and and helping your neighbor, and that's what it talks about. The fact that people could allow the evil to come out in every way, it's every time there was something created in this world that was special, it always surrounded around compassion. and the fact that people act evilly is what we have to break and change. But you can't blame any of the religions. You just can't blame them. That's what I see. We have to go back to what the religion keeps saying. As a matter of fact, a long time ago when I read the Quran, which I don't know if I should admit, although I have a great story about the Quran. I don't know if I ever shared it on the podcast, but I was almost annoyed by how many times it said to help your neighbor. I was like, oh, I got it. You saw something good in the Torah, and, and you kept repeating it over and over. What I'm saying is, like, whenever we cannot forget that it keeps saying these things and keep listening. It does not say do really intensive somatic therapy in the Torah. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say it in any religion. I don't think it's a bad idea.
Right.
But it's not going to answer our problems.
Right.
Too much?
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, I as you're saying it, I'm like, the thing that makes this place tick is the compassion. It's everything, because every time there's something here that I don't like, something that bothers me, there's somebody that's bothering me, or something happens here, like the way that I always get brought back is you'll say something like, we need to have more compassion, because that's the part that's missing. Is because when I'm not being compassionate, that's when I'm getting angry, that's when I'm getting upset, that's when my ego is taking over, that's when I'm feeling like slighted or hurt. And it's like, no, recognize like who we're dealing with, like recognize that a little bit of compassion would go a really, really long way. And I see it here for sure amongst the staff, and I see how also it plays out along with the people that work here, or the people that live here, or the people that have lived here, and they come back and they're like, they can even tell me now, like like when I'll be like, oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe what this new guy just did, and they'll be like, Ellie, like, have some compassion for him.
I love it when they throw back in their face.
Yeah,
so nice.
But it's true, and that's always the answer for me. If I'm able to have enough compassion in my heart, everything goes, and all of a sudden everything's okay, And when the other person is able to feel that, if my compassion is being felt, now, there's no need for that, for whatever is getting in the way, there's no need for it anymore.
Well, I didn't know where this podcast was gonna go.
Yeah,
because I sit with you like, what do they call it? Like, you're my work wife.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward. Which one of us is the wife?
Come on. No, I'm just kidding. He's very emotional.
We have this conversation over. One of us in our village is the Tati, and one is the mommy, and it's not.
Yeah,
it hasn't been.
I think I'm the Tati.
Are we into that?
Wait, yeah,
absolutely.
I would definitely say that Ellie's a Tati and Sonny's a mommy.
I'm
immediately able to answer that.
Okay,
it could be that for each individual.
It changes,
like we play different roles for different people.
That's right.
But I mean that it kind of goes back into like the reparenting, and like that like we are filling those roles in a way, which is pretty unique. And
does that mean show him the uncle? Let's show him.
Shalom is that could
we have a trio doing this. The three musketeers doing this. I gotta have Shalom on again. We had him on already. Okay, so you don't get away with the question.
Oh,
the question.
Yeah, you think that I'd be prepared for this? Because
I'll tell you what. I'll
been here for every single podcast.
2 questions.
Okay,
right?
Go for it.
First question. That is not. I've never asked anybody. I don't think before.
Okay. Lay it on me.
You ready?
Go for it.
Which book do you think has changed your life?
Okay.
One book.
Okay.
That's it. That's the whole question.
That's the whole question? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to have another question.
Wow.
Then I'll ask you the other question.
I'd have to say the Quran.
That's terrible. That's a clip. Oh, no. Maybe I shouldn't have talked about the Quran too much. Ay. Do you want to hear the Quran story really
Go
quick?
for it, yeah.
so
Give me more time to think of the answer to. Your
Okay, you
question.
think you know the next question,
Yeah.
so think about the answer. The Quran story is fantastic. Basically, my mother-in-law, who's a highly spiritual woman and awesome, and I love her very much. She came to visit me, and I have I have all my books. You guys don't see it in the podcast, but I'm like I have books everywhere. Wherever you can look, I have books, and I love reading. And I also have a secret stash of books where nobody knows about, where are the illicit books that I don't show everybody that I read. A lot of them have to do with other religions and philosophies that people are not so excited about.
The Kfir box.
Kfir box.
Yeah.
I'm going to get him. It's not good. All right. Anyway, I can't stop my curiosity, so I have my I'm going to call it Kfir box from now on. And my mother-in-law discovered it. And so she comes upstairs. She was staying downstairs for Shabbos. And she goes, why do you have this? And I said, have what? And she showed me the Quran. She found my Kfir box.
Wow.
And I said, well, halachically, you're allowed to have it. It's not, it's not Avodah Zarah. They believe in one God. And I really was fascinated to read it. And so I had read it at the time, but I just had to explain to my mother-in-law why it is. So then the next morning, that was Friday night. So she's like, I don't think you should have it, whatever. Next morning, she wakes up. She comes up. She tells me, it's gone. I threw it out. She didn't just throw it in the garbage. She threw it in the outside garbage,
So you
where
couldn't
the
take it
bears
out.
come and get it. And months, So I'm like, why'd you throw it out? And she said, okay, this is what happened. I was curious because you said I could read it.
Yeah.
So I was curious. She fell asleep reading the Quran next to her head,
Great.
And she immediately went to sleep and had a dream that her grandfather, like who sacrificed his life for like the holiest person in the world. I think it was a grandfather and a grandmother. Like everybody came. It was like a Fiddler on a Roof scene, where they were like Toma or something like that.
That's great.
And then she woke up in the middle of the night, like 3:00 in the morning, and got on some clothes, went outside, and threw it in the garbage.
That's a great
So,
story.
I
I think if
longer-
anyone who knows your mother-in-law makes the story even better.
It's
That's a
so
great
much
story.
better if you know her.
Yeah.
And I figured, listen, I wasn't gonna fish it out of the garbage.
Yeah.
If my mother-in-law decided it's inappropriate,
That's a
it's
great story.
inappropriate. So I will say
yeah.
I was not so impressed with the Quran.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, it's all right. I just think that the Torah was better. I'm
Yeah.
saying. The
Well,
sequel ain't
the
as good as
original
the
is
original.
usually- yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't think they brought so much new to the party. Anyway,
So I was so fascinated with your story that I forgot to think about what book. I mean, it's really a hard question because I have so many great books, and I also love books, and I love buying books, and my wife hates when I buy books.
right.
'Cause I buy so many.
I could skip the question.
It's a good question. I'll have two books.
Two books.
So
So,
I don't want to say they're the greatest of all time, but two books that I absolutely love. One is The Alchemist.
I love The Alchemist. I just talked about it last night.
Did you?
Yeah.
That was me.
No, it was someone else.
Okay. Fascinating book. I love it. It's so deep and so many amazing messages. And if you haven't read it yet, go read it.
Nice.
And the other book that I want to say, which has really, really made an impact on my life, is the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's not my favorite book. Okay, I will say that. As a matter of fact, there are some times when I really don't like that book, and I don't want to see it, and I want to hear anyone quoting it. And enough with you and your big book. However, I will say that the content that is found in the big book is so deeply profound and also yet so simple at the same time, and really has the capacity to really transform something if you are able to go in there and strip away all the dogma and strip away all the AA culture out of it and just read what was written. It's so simple. A lot of it is stuff that, or if not all of it, are concepts that we could find in the Torah. But if we're able to really look at those concepts, and for me personally, when I spent time with the big book and went into the concepts and really took it apart and really applied the concepts and philosophies to my life, it really, really made a major difference. So I think that everybody should have a copy in their homes, whether you're an alcoholic or not. It's really, I just tell people, take the word alcohol out, because none of the 12 steps, believe it or not, say stop drinking alcohol.
Right.
Which is pretty fascinating. You would think that would be the first step, but it's really not, because it's not what the 12 steps are about. So,
well,
yeah.
These are acceptable answers.
Okay, I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you for
And I would
allowing
go
me to.
longer, but we're running out of time. I don't know, running out of time, but I do want to ask you that question. Okay. If you could stand the rooftops and yell something to the world, what would that be, Mr. Eli Erenthal?
I really should have prepared for this, because I have been
nobody
in
prepares
this
and
room
everybody knows it's coming.
for every single podcast since they've started, and I've heard this question asked, and I should have thought about this. I mean, I guess I would say listen to this podcast, because we pretty much spoke about it. But I'll say like this.
Imagine you standing on a rooftop going, listen to this podcast!
Find it now on Spotify. Or Apple Podcasts.
You have marketing in your blood.
Yeah. No, I would say like this. It really occurs to me, that most people are struggling on some level. Like, most people are walking around with some level of discomfort, anxiety, depression, fear, whatever it is. And it's a spectrum, obviously. There's some people that are struggling more, and there's some people that are struggling less. And every single one of us has the capacity to make a difference for another human being. Every single one of us has the capacity to do something. It doesn't have to be something great and large and big, but we have the capacity to go over to somebody and make a difference for that person. And it could be just as simple as saying hello, giving the person a hug, just checking in with another person. And, I think that where we get stuck and we're not able to do that is because we don't recognize how great we are. We don't recognize how special and amazing and powerful we are, so that we feel, inferior, that I can't help that person, or who am I? I'm not already healed, so how can I go help another person? Or I'm so stuck in my own stuff that I can't help anybody. But it's a falsity. It's a lie. Is falsity a word?
I don't know.
It's a lie. Okay? It's not true. The truth is that every single one of us has the capacity to make a difference for another human being. And when we tap into that capacity, and when we actually go out and we do that and we make a difference for another person, another human being, besides for the fact that it feels really good and it's really fulfilling, you have no idea what kind of impact you're having, and the butterfly effect, and the impact that you're going to have for this person. And I saw this somewhere on the interweb, where it says one person may not be able to change the whole world, but you could change one person's world. So if I had a message that we could go shout out from the rooftops, it would be, go out and change one person's world.
Oh, I love it. Okay, well, I will say that it is and is always an amazing honor to be doing this awesome, godly work with you.
I accept.
And I will say that in my life, I've met very few people with the enormous capacity for compassion like you.
Oh, wow.
And I'm glad that I gave you a place to release it on the world, to have it run wild, because it's needed. And it's beautiful that you're doing it. And I love you and your family. I'm becoming a little bit of an uncle because I give Shabbos treats.
That's true.
It's pretty awesome.
That's true. Kiva actually asked me today. I said I'm going to. He's like, if you go, can you buy me candy? I was like, Uncle Sonny's coming tomorrow. It's Friday. Right.
There'll be candy.
Right.
It'll come. Yeah. I try to get them really creative candies.
Yeah, he actually said, "Can you get me the one that Sonny gets?" I'm like, "No, those are really expensive." We'll let Uncle Sonny get
That's
those.
for the guy with the Tesla.
Right.
Yeah, you're not getting any of that.
No, it's like cool, and it's like has the toys and it has candies in it. I'm like, no.
I love.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to be a grandparent, because spoiling is just. I wish I could just spoil people all the time.
Kids love it.
Anyway, I love you, man. What an awesome podcast.
Yeah,
And
thanks for
honor to
having
do
me,
it.
Sonny. I appreciate you asking me. It's a different view from this side of the camera. Yeah, different view on this side of the camera, and it is a real honor to be here as a guest, and also an honor to be part of the village. And yeah, I guess I'll be back in 2 years.
Maybe a year.
We'll see.
Maybe if people have questions,
Yeah.
come back. I do want to
valid.
mention. Maybe I'll mention in the intro. No, I'm starting to tell people if they have questions, they should put it on the YouTube,
Yeah.
and they should subscribe. What was this to say?
Subscribe,
like,
comment,
Like,
follow.
subscribe, follow, comment, because we are actually thinking of doing a call-in podcast, which may be really
Very
interesting.
exciting.
Like that idea.
So if you have questions that need to be answered and that we could ponder and think about, we'd love to help.
Also, if you're still listening, congratulations. I'm so glad you're still here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be? What a fascinating conversation. Anyway, I love y'all. Till next time.
Thank you for this day that I've been given. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this chance to live a new